Give me the lights and start the show.
All right, I wanted to do something, kind of a recap on not just the ABFF, the film festival, but kind of a recap on what goes into like kind of thinking about the film festival and activities like that. As you know, I'm a man of a certain age, which even at this age, men have the freedom of being able to say their age. So I'm cinco, 55, cinco de cinco, right? 5 of 5, whatever you want to call it. Just having fun with it. Anyway, but at this year in the film festival is like 26 years old. So I'm like twice as old as the film festival. But for a film festival that's like 20-something years old, that's an old film festival. That's a long time film festival. And, coming out of the quarantine, all live events and things like that had to kind of adjust, do things and grow, have growing pains and all that stuff. So it was interesting that I'm hearing people talk about the film festival, and oh my God, there's so many young people, and it's cool that they have it. And I'm like, Comic Cons didn't really learn their lesson in terms of including young people in, and the young people went ahead and started their own Comic Cons. But I don't think it's the older Black Comic Cons fault totally, because I think with Comic Cons they had Black sci-fi and Black comic books emerging at the same time that young people were empowering themselves. So I don't think it was that only, but I do think, they created out of need to find themselves a place. And a lot of these Black Comic Cons, and not even just Black Comic Cons, a lot of these old Comic Cons didn't really embrace cosplay. And cosplay was the leading force in creating some of these other conventions. They don't even really have comic books as their main showcase. They, do it as a gathering of Black nerds in cosplay. And they call it the Blurred convention or whatever it is, called. And that's just some of them. But they're cool, and I respect all of them. But it just shows, with the ABFF, how things could have gone, and glad they, decided to come to ABFF. And, it's really hard to have a generational Tyler Perry. Every generation, you ain't gonna really have that. Tyler Perry is practically a couple of years younger than John Singleton would have been. He's, less than 10 years younger than Spike Lee. So for whatever it's worth, Lee Daniels and John Singleton practically all in the same age group, so we'll see. But there's definitely the Ryan Cooglers, the Ava DuVernays. There's a whole bunch of young directors and filmmakers that are coming up through the ranks. However, with Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay, they come into the ABFF. So everybody jumped in. Now, at the same time, people are talking about ABFF and the growing pains, right? Particularly my peers. I had a conversation with a white writer today, which kind of introductory conversations with writers and people always kind of turn into, some type of, I would say, stress therapy conversation, where we talk about how we've both been in this industry for a while and how, things are going and how it's kind of a game of survival. He's like, yeah, man, I got 50 books, and he was beautiful in describing how he went to a horror convention and he was pitching a book for 10 years. I did not know how to do that. I've been writing books for 10 years, but, I forgot to ask him, I didn't really that wasn't our therapy towards each other, was a side conversation. But it would be interesting to know if he didn't write any other books for 10 years. I can see you writing a book and pitching it for 10 years if you got other books that you're writing and getting those out. I had Harlem Shake, Rashida the Zombie Killer, and Welcome to Boss Lady's Planet all being pitched at the same time. However, I couldn't hold out. Eventually I wrote, I eventually released them myself. So as much as I'd like to say I was waiting, I don't think it lasted maybe 3 years. I think, if I write a book a year, by the time I wrote Rashida Zombie Killer, I was already ready to publish the books. So it's interesting, somebody is able to wait 10 years, but then he told me how he got his first publishing deal, and he said that Neil Gaiman sat down at his table, the horror writer, American Gods is his big brand. So Neil sat down at his table at a horror convention, and he was like, "Oh my God, amazing! Neil is sitting here." So he said, "Neil, can I interview you?" And he interviewed him, and he said, "Sure." He take my number. He said, "Why are you sitting here?" Neil asked him, and he said, "Man, I'm trying to get a publishing deal." He said, "Oh man, call up this company." And I forgot the company, to ask him if the company's still looking, right? And he said, "They'll publish you." And dude went and called the company up. Next thing you know, he got his first publishing deal. And I mentioned that story because it speaks to kind of even how I got my first horror science fiction publishing deal for It Happened on Negro Mountain. I was at a horror convention, and I mentioned, my book to another writer, and the other writer said, "Hey man, I got published," and this was with Black Bed Sheets, and they published Negro Mountain. So, people always tell you when you are coming up with stories or pitching books to publishers to do your research and also make sure that you know what company you're pitching to and what books they'll like. And a lot of times it isn't even it isn't even your book per se. It's the right time at the right place at the right time. And so that was beautiful, and then he gave me another example of a writer who wrote a book, short stories with Robert Henlon, and how that went. And he said, "Yeah, man, this guy did this," and then next thing you know, he's ghostwriting a story for Robert Henlon in this magazine. And it was always encouraging. He was using these stories to encourage me to not stress out over kind of just how long it takes. It's a survival of the fittest, it's persistence, and those things wear on you, So I started thinking, and I told him, I had met a couple people in film who had gotten deals because they had worked with other people, and how deals and things get made. And then I said, it's always good to talk to other people because you know what you've experienced what you experienced, but talking to other people, specifically people in the mainstream, for a black science fiction writer, which is a very niche genre, it's really cool to talk because you hear stories like, "I waited 10 years to get a publishing deal." Shoot, black people in science fiction or in general wait 10 years for a publishing deal. They'll start to think it's a conspiracy. There's a reason why I'm not getting a deal. Either it's the people, the man, or the universe. They'll even blame God. We just probably get so spiritual, that's what we do. But in reality, it is a game of survival, persistence, staying on your grind. I told him about my story, Welcome to Boss Ladies Planet, and how that particular story came to be, and how, you know, I had it with me to share at ABFF, you know. And the story is, it was 2019. I had just worked on a movie that winter that's coming out this summer called Stay Out. And I was like, man, I can do another movie. So I asked my man, I said, dude, if we, you know, do 2 movies at once, you know, that's only 1 expenses for you. I said, well, you cut the price. He said, no problem. He said, it'd be practically like doing 2 for 1, you know, as low as it'll be, because most of my costs, you know, and I'm dealing with low budget filmmaking, was through expenses, travel, lodging. He said, but if, you know, we shooting 2 at once, then I don't have to pay 2 lodgings. I only have to pay 1 travel. So I knocked it out, and I found 2 stories that I could do: The Conjuring of Baba and The Black Nun, that we could shoot. There was overlapping scenes, but I, you know, different characters, and I put a really banging production schedule together, and we shot these 2 movies. Shout out to Tim and Mark Polonia, Tim White, Mark Polonia, who were the primary crew. Even Lindell Roberts joined in, and we pulled it off with the help of people like Keith Wade, who acted and helped assist with the production. Made it through. And that those last 3 movies, for me, I made an effort to do a little bit more directing, and I learned directing, and I learned to trust myself with a good cinematographer, how to direct. And so now that gave me another area that I could cut out of my production costs, or at least be able to save, put more of my personal stamp on, right? So then I said, wow, you know, I have this story that called The Programmable Man. Maybe I can shoot that. It's not that big of a deal. You know, it's not that elaborate a scene. And it turned out that it really worked. So I wrote 2 more stories, The Ass Doctor and The Banger Brothers, to go along with that. And then the quarantine hit. I'm like, oh my God, I can't shoot a movie. So I then decided, well, let me make this into a graphic novel. And I found 3 artists, Zebra Comics out of Cameroon, Alan Saint out of Oakland, and Joey Martinez out of Orlando. And paired them up, got them working simultaneously. And then I realized the film festival's coming back, and I was like, I'm not doing LitCon because I don't know how many people's gonna be at the film festival. So let me figure out how to, you know, do my thing. And I said, if I have a comic book, then that's easier pitch. So I ran a Kickstarter January, and the comic book came out in February. So by the time I had attended this year's film festival, this was one of my best put together comic books ever, because I had 3 short stories, and I added 2 more short stories, a preview of my Gold Digger Killer comic, and it came together. But it was a year in progress, so I had to do this for a year. And I say that in my stress management conversation, because it was part of me managing my stress that allowed me to focus, to make a pivot from a screenplay attempt. I had already started outlining where I would shoot stuff. I was already in pre-production, right? Casting it. And then this quarantine comes and it shuts it down for like 2 years. So it took me maybe about a year to find the artist and decide on it and pin the comic book script. But everything worked out. So Now I'm sitting back waiting for people to like it and give me a call. So anyway, that's just it. This is, I guess, demonstrating how I survive the stress of surviving, making it as a writer. So if it's a game of survival, then this is live from the survival tapes of Jeff Carroll. Thank you. Remember, like, subscribe, share, and comment. I got this blog because we were talking about each other's experiences. Now I'm sweating in my car because I didn't want to turn it on because the gas costs too much. So my studio doesn't have AC right now. But anyway, thank you. Like, subscribe, and share. Peace.